Warframe is a game I have a love-hate relationship with. It's great in some ways and terrible in others, and overall is a fairly interesting experience in terms of what it would be like to review as a game. And my reactions to it and my levels of enjoyment from it have been a mixed bag. At best, a mixed bag. I originally installed Warframe years ago. Many years ago. Maybe 2.5 or so years ago. And the game has completely changed. I didn't know this, though. I played the game originally for like 4 hours and thought it was so grindy and awful and unfun that I just stopped playing. Just simple as that. A friend of mine, though, had been playing it a lot, and he told me that I should play Warframe. And when I told him I didn't like it, he said, "No, how long ago was it that you played it?" And when I told him it was years, he said, look, the game is completely different. The game is completely different. Almost everything has changed. They've added so much. It's basically a different game than what it was when it first started out. So I loaded it back up, and he was right. The game has been significantly improved from what it was when it first came out. And were I to review a game like Warframe when it first came out, I would say that it is passable would probably be the most complimentary word I would use for it. Though now I can legitimately say that there is fun to be had with Warframe. But I don't know if the fun you have in Warframe is the kind of fun that really keeps me going. Since then, I've probably put about 69-ish hours into Warframe since I first bought it. So I've played it a bit, quite a bit. Let's go ahead and start at the beginning, and I'll try to keep this as chronologically appropriate as I can, because my thoughts and feelings of Warframe have shifted back and forth, good to bad to better to worse as I've played it. I'll say this, though, to start things off. This is a game that sucks when you start it. This game is dog shit when you first play. At least that's how I felt. And one of the reasons that is because the tutorials of this game are practically non-existent. I spent an incredible amount of time on the Warframe wiki. What does this do? What does that do? How do I get this? Why can't I do this? How do I enable myself to do this? What are blueprints? Where do I get them? How do I get to this? How do I get to that? It seemed like every time something happened, I'd shift tab and then go to the wiki and try to figure out what just happened or why something isn't happening when I thought it would. Where do I have to go to get this? How do I get new Warframes? Blah, blah, blah. A lot of this stuff is simple now. A lot of this stuff is very rudimentary and very basic, but it's not really explained to you as a new player. I had to look up things like, how do I get new Warframes? How do I do this? How do I do that? And if you don't really practically study the wiki like a Bible, or have some people who play the game, as I do, I have one friend, he has, let me check, he has 174 hours, and he taught me a lot of things as I was starting out, and I have another friend, and, I mean, holy shit, she has 1,936 hours in this game. Dear Lord, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm at 75, and I feel burned out. I feel completely and totally burned out by this game. I don't feel like there's anything more to do because the game seems to be about unlocking things. This isn't a game about playing. This isn't a game about fighting. This isn't a game about improving your skill. This is a game about unlocking things and grinding to unlock things. Sometimes having the things you need for unlocking the next suit or Warframe or weapon or really anything being maddeningly frustrating to acquire. I remember doing one mission over a dozen times back to back to back to back to get one of 3 components that I needed when I had easily 6 or so copies of the other components, and it just wouldn't drop that last one. Is that supposed to be fun? Is that why I should be playing a game, for the grind of unlocking something else that I play and use so I could grind to unlock something else? The repetition of these missions is incredible. And while there is a variety of different objectives they still all feel very samey, because it's mostly you trying to get your character to a point where you can most easily and efficiently eradicate as many enemies as quickly as possible. Though I will say that, like with the Volt Warframe I'm using here, with Rhino, I have had legitimate fun in just going through maps, especially with a lot of other players with me, in survival missions and defense missions and such as, and just destroying everything on my path, trying to go through and zapping this guy and putting this barrier up and shooting through it and moving around and doing as best as I can. There's enjoyment to be had in that. And when the game is really fun to do, then I think it shines its best. The problem is, it's kind of like with DayZ. The moments that are fun are extremely fun, but there is such a huge amount of either downtime or not funness that you have to experience and go through in order to get to that point. I found myself playing missions not because it's the most fun mission to do, but because I need the components for this blueprint to build this gun or to get this Warframe, so I need to keep playing this mission over and over and over, regardless of how much I enjoy it, so that I can get this next Warframe. And the cycle begins anew. Now, I only have 75 hours in it, so I can't speak exactly as to the later stages of getting the monetary currency in this game, the platinum that you have to spend money on, though I will say I did spend money on this game, as it is a free-to-play game, and I don't feel as if it's unfair. I don't feel as if this game has an unfair business model. I think it's reasonable, and I don't have any problems at all supporting the game. It's not a bad game. Maybe this is all just a matter of taste. I mean, shit, I've got friends with 500 hours, as I said before, 1,936 hours in this game. There's clearly something to be enjoyed here, and even I can recognize that. I think Warframe's, or one of its biggest problems, though, is that you spend all of your time, or 95% of your time, doing missions that are seemingly almost identical, that feel almost identical, even if they're not the same objectives. And that combat that you do, the actual playing that you do, is not really that deep, and it's not even really that satisfying most of the time. It's very, very simple. It's very, very rudimentary. It's very, very, I mean, it works. It's functional. I don't have any issues with it in terms of how it actually executes itself. It's just not always a very fun thing to do. And there's a lot to be said about simplicity. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it just feels like, you know, I've done this 1,000 times already. Here we go again. But like I said before, the game seems to be about getting your Warframe and leveling up to the point where you can unlock things as fast as possible and mow through as many enemies as possible as quickly and efficiently as you can. As far as the multiplayer aspect of it goes, I haven't played the competitive game types. I have no interest in that. The way that you join with other players to complete missions is very odd, because there doesn't seem to be any sort of scaling in terms of how much damage players of varying levels can pour onto enemies. This happens frequently on the boss missions that I would do that would drop, most notably, the Warframe blueprints. Warframes being probably the most sought-after things to unlock because they are the core of what your playstyle will become. There's a lot of mooching in this game, a lot of mooching. These high-level friends of mine would get into these very high-level missions when I was very low-leveled, and they would say, here, you chose Loki as your starter, because way back when you could do that, and that's who I chose. You just don't die, and you run around and try to survive, and we'll rank all your stuff up really quickly. And this strategy immensely accelerated the rate at which I was leveling up my weapons, my Warframe, and I was getting goodies and components. And this wouldn't just happen from me playing at levels that were ludicrous for me to play in, but also because he would give me mods which were customization options for your Warframe and your weapons that would make them more powerful and allow them to do new things. A system that I do like, by the way. He would give me things like, here, now you have 400% more health. You have 400% more shields. And even then, on some missions, I was having a fair amount of difficulty. So I cannot imagine going through this game without having those extremely powerful mods unlocked for my Warframe. I struggle to think of how difficult the game would be without that maybe unfair boost that I got from him, because he made a very generous donation to the Rags Enjoyment of Warframe Fund. The public lobbies in this game, though, are a joke, especially if you're trying to have things be immersive in any way. Bosses, as I said before, which I would play over and over to get Warframe bits and pieces, I would see characters, this happens constantly. Constantly. If you're playing in public, you'll be going through your mission, and you will struggle to keep up with the players who will inevitably join in your mission, who are ranked ludicrously over the missions level, who can literally one-shot the boss before you so much have a chance to even see him and go and get the loot, before you feel like you're obligated to hurry to the exit so you don't hold up other players who have played this game far longer than you are. This works to your objective advantage because, well, the boss dies instantly and you get the goodies from that. But there were missions where 3, 4, 5 times in a row I would be playing and people would join in the game and they would zoom as fast as possible to the boss, tap him once, kill him, and I wouldn't even see the boss before I got the message, there are players waiting for you. Even when I was doing solo missions, I remember doing missions over and over and over and over because some parts would just be extremely difficult to have drop. I would have a Warframe that would have 3 components, and I would have like the chassis, and I would have the head, and I would get those over and over and over and over, and I needed the systems component, and it would only finally drop after the dozenth time I did the same mission. But by then, I was basically robotic in how efficient I could go through the map, get to the boss, knock him out as fast as possible, and hope to God he dropped that one thing I needed. That probably sums up the majority of the Warframe experience. You doing the same thing over and over and over ad nauseum, practically into perpetuity it seems, to get that one thing that you need, or to finally stock up enough components for a rifle or a gun that you desperately want to try out. I will praise the game for a number of things, though. It runs very well, and when things are going your way, when you are in a map where there are lots of enemies, hell, the game is the most fun when there are a ludicrous amount of enemies headed your way to where it's practically chaotic, and you're doing everything that you can to stay alive with the other players in the game, and you're trying to heal them, and you're putting down shields, and you're doing as much AoE damage as possible, and you're dumping magazines into the hordes advancing on you. The game is legitimately enjoyable. You don't get to 75 hours of a game without finding some enjoyment in it. And not only that, but I will praise this game, and it may seem like an odd praise, but this game is excellent to play if you want to listen to podcasts or the audio of movies or TV shows in the background, because the audio cues from the game are not necessarily necessary. A lot of time that I spent was doing that, where I was playing this game and listening to something else in the back. It's an excellent time waster, I will give it that. And that's not an insult. If a game is a good time waster, I think that's a positive for it, especially because you enjoy it. Like the old saying goes, time you enjoy wasting is not time wasted. In fact, I would probably consider that the motto of this game. Time you enjoy wasting is not time wasted. Other things I enjoy about the game is that it looks really good. I like the way it looks. I like the art style and the aesthetics, the way everything has that odd and silly, impractical aesthetic to it, but it's kind of neat and interesting. The layouts of the maps and the bases and ships that you go into, I like those as well. Enemy variety is interesting enough, while not fantastic, it is interesting enough to not leave you really wanting. Movement is fairly fluid, and it is almost like a metagame in its own right to see how fast and efficiently you could move through the environment. Warframes are extremely different in how they play. I hate some Warframes and love some others, and I enjoy trying new ones. Though I do feel that 4 powers per Warframe is maybe a little, skimp. Don't consider this a review, please. These are just a collection of thoughts that I've had on a game that I've recently been pouring a lot of time into. Overall, I would say Warframe is a good game, and there's a lot of nitpicking that is to be done on it, and I believe rightfully so. I'm a casual Warframer, so talking about the balance of this and that is not my forte, so I will not attempt it. I didn't really line up talking points. This is just more of me talking to myself in my living room about Warframe, so take that as what you will.